moderating the candidate webinars. The structure of the webinar is as follows. We will hear from the candidates grouped by the position that they are running for. Each candidate will have 5 minutes for opening remarks, followed by a 10-minute question and answer period for both candidates. You'll see a photograph of each candidate as they are speaking, unless other materials have been provided. Providing other materials was optional and not mandatory for the candidates. If you would like to ask a question of a candidate, there are 2 ways to do so. I will open the floor for questions after each of the candidates has spoken, and you can verbally address your questions to the candidates using the telephone. I would ask that you please first say your name in case there are multiple questions, and I will address yours in order. The other way that you can ask questions is you can also submit your question by typing it into the chat box, which you will find at the bottom right of your screen, of your webinar screen. Type in your question there, and please state the MAL position to whom your question is directed. And as you're listening to the candidates speak, please feel free to type in your questions as often and as you think of them. Both candidates for each position will have an opportunity to address each question, and I will ask them in rotating order so that not everybody answers first all the time or second all the time. Candidates will have 1 minute to respond to a question directed to them. Sarah from Home Office will announce when they have 15 seconds left to speak. If they go over this time, I will be the one to ask them to stop. So let's begin. I first want to inform you that the MAL administration position, one of our candidates for this position has withdrawn her nomination. So Rhonda Crocker-Ellicott is now the acclaimed candidate, and so we will move on to the next position. The position that we will have our candidates speak to is the MAL education. Can I please ask Elizabeth Edwards to take 5 minutes to present her position?
Thanks, Rhonda. It's really nice to be able to join these webinars and speak to the membership about nursing education and the role of the MAL for education. I've been the person who has filled that role for the last year. There was a need to have someone sort of move in the middle of the term because the previous incumbent was unable to continue in that role. So I'm very happy to have been elected to that position. And I'd really like to continue to represent nursing education on the board for RNAO for a couple of reasons. One is that it's a really good experience to be on the board. It's a real privilege to serve the members in the capacity of a board member. But the other is that because the MAL position was inactive for a while, that also meant that the Member Education Committee, which is a board committee, was inactive for a period of time. So we reconvened at the end of August last year, and since that time we've had 4 meetings with a 5th one planned for this coming May before the board turns over again. And we have made some really significant inroads into developing some initiatives, and I'd really love the opportunity to be able to see them through to completion, or at least to a point in the next year where we can turn them over to Home Office to move them to the next stage forward. So the things that we have worked on as the Member Education Committee and in my role as chair of that committee have been a really detailed examination and monitoring of the impact of the new NCLEX examination for new grads. Everybody's heard about them and some of the struggles and I guess the word I'm looking for, some of the challenges that we've faced with having a computer-assisted registration exam for new grads. Some people have done okay with them, but other folks have struggled with this new technology. So we've continued to monitor that. We have reached out to the College of Nurses of Ontario to ask if they would be interested in joining the committee to have their voice there, but so far we haven't had any takers there. And I think some of the things that we've identified have been everything from looking at the academic challenges of a new exam and what that means for nursing curricula across the province, but we've also identified issues related to the costs and the intensivity of the resources that have been needed for new grads and what happens to them when they're unsuccessful. It costs the system in terms of their orientation time, preceptorship, investments, all of those things. So we've been monitoring that very, very closely. The other things that we've looked at have been the consequence of RN replacement in terms of availability of supports for clinical placements and for pre-grad preceptorships. There's been a decline in the availability of those capacities, especially in some of the more rural or northern communities in the province where they already had limited access to placements. So that's something else that we've looked at really sincerely. RN replacement doesn't just affect patient care, it affects the quality of undergraduate nursing education as well. We've also looked at the clinical support that undermines for new graduates. They need experienced preceptors or experienced nurses, colleagues with whom to work, and so that's been an issue that we've taken a good look at. Other things that I think that we have spearheaded has been the loss of educational opportunities and support for nurses working in clinical environments across the province. It's not just, the committee doesn't just look at academic education environments. We also look at clinical practice opportunities for and education there. We know that very often education departments are the first ones that get cut when there are budget reductions, and that certainly has been the case. Most nurses I know don't have the opportunity to be able to go to a really expensive conference once or twice a year, and so they rely on their educators in-house to help them with upgrading and interpret some of the new technologies and research and that sort of thing that they rely on for their daily practice. So we've looked across the board at some of those issues. And then one of the things that we're just starting to examine is the issue of student poverty, which affects all students, but it affects nursing students in particular. And so we're looking at some of the consequences of that. So given that the committee represents folks who are both academics and clinical educators as well, we have a very diverse membership on that committee, and we have a breadth of interests that we're examining and initiatives, and I would like to continue to represent the membership of both of those domains of practice and education. And that's all for now.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Tammy, may I ask you to take your 5 minutes to present your positions, please?
Yes, before I start, Rhonda, I just want to mention I cannot get onto the webinar, so I'm just going to do it over teleconference, and if there are any questions, could I ask you to read them out so I could respond to them after the fact?
Absolutely, we will do that for sure, no problem.
Okay, thank you. Thanks so much. I just want to say thank you again for setting up these webinars so that we can speak to the membership across the province. As we know, Ontario is a pretty big place, so this is nice to have the technology available, even though it doesn't always work 100% all the time. At least the phone is working, so that's great. I would like to start with a little bit about me, just so that the membership who haven't heard the first webinar knows that I have been in education for many, many years. I'm originally from Nova Scotia. I am a diploma grad from 1980, and that's all I'm going to say about my age. I have gone on to get a baccalaureate, a master's, and I just completed a PhD last year, and I am this year completing the CASN Nurse Educator Certificate, and when the credentialing exam comes out, I will write that as well to be a certified nurse educator. And I think the reason I've always gone on to do education is that I really believe that education is the other half of caring in the nursing profession. So we care for our patients, but we also have to be educated enough to be able to care in a safe and appropriate way. So in my professional life, I have developed many programs. I have a good understanding of the educational issues that exist in Ontario right now. And I've also worked in non-academic settings. So I have settings that have been at the college and university level, and I have worked with institutions such as BON, developing programs with them. And I also am past manager for Telehealth Ontario. I helped to bring Telehealth Ontario to Ontario to set up the nurse call line, which the RNAO did support quite nicely when we first started out, which was really great. So I I think when I was writing down my priorities for this position, I recognize all the hard work that Elizabeth has done, because I couldn't find anything from 2014 because, as she said, the position had been vacant and it hadn't met. So it's really good that she stepped up to the mantle and she took that on and got the education committee moving forward, because there are a lot of issues in education that are impacted by what's happening in nursing in general in Ontario, and such as the decrease in nurse positions, the cutting of nursing positions, which have impacted placements and have impacted that clinical wisdom that exists for new grads. And as a result, new grads are struggling more than ever with transitioning into the role of an RN. So, you know, the other impact from that is that seats in academic programs may be impacted because nobody can get a job. So, as happened with the teachers many years ago, why would you want to hire, or why would you want to educate more nurses than you have jobs for? And those of us who have been around know this is cyclical, but it's also a concern. My second priority is the NCLEX. As Elizabeth mentioned, we are still working through that, and there are still huge educational results that we have to deal with on a local as well as a provincial level. And if I'm the successful candidate, I would really like to get a provincial strategy started so that we can share things as a province that educates nurses, not necessarily siloed into each individual university. And I think it's important that we share best practices and that we group together to make these students successful. My own priority would be about education for nurses in remote and rural areas. Because I worked in the far north, I know that it's difficult to get educational opportunities, even with the internet and telephone, because at times the broadband doesn't exist. So for those nurses who work in the far north, who have responsibilities and ethical responsibilities to maintain their competency, you know, that's a challenge. And so I think that's a role the Education Committee in the RNAO can undertake and look at to see what it can suggest. And my final priority relates to the RN prescribing, which I think is an excellent move for our scope of practice, but really has to be done in the implementation has to be done thoughtfully and organized so that when it rolls out, there's no problem with the way nurses are understanding their role, and we don't have to have issues with people who are the same profession having some infighting, which there is a potential that people don't understand what the role this role of nurse prescribing totally will mean. So it's important that we are thoughtful, we roll it out in a safe and practiced and organized manner, and I hope RNAO will have an ability to give it feedback on how that happens. So my priorities fit with the member-at-large education because I think the emphasis is on all aspects of education, and it's those, as Elizabeth said, nurses who are becoming nurses, nurses after they graduate, nurses in various walks of life and in various geographical locations in Ontario. And I think the links that we see, sorry about that, it was separate beeping. So the links that the RNAO or the RNAO's priorities link really, really nicely with education, because really what's happening in nursing directly impacts back into the education of nurses.
That's 5 minutes.
And so I think that's, I feel my experience will help quite a bit in this particular role. And I think that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Tammy. I will now open it up for those who are on the line who might want to ask a question over the phone. Are there any questions? And if there are, please say your name first. Any questions?
Oh.
Hello? Sarah, do you have any questions from the webinar itself?
No, we don't. And just a reminder to everyone, you can type in your questions in that bottom right-hand box, the chat box, and I'll read it out loud over the phone.
So I'll ask again if there's anybody on the phone who has a question for either of our candidates, well, and it will be asked of both candidates. Okay, and keep your thinking caps on, because as our next two candidates speak, while I will open it up a question period for the MAL practice specifically, I will then, if there is time, open up to see if there are any other additional questions. So if there are no other questions, I will move on to the MAL practice, and I will ask Maria if she will take her 5 minutes to talk about her position.
Yes, good evening, and thank you very much for having me, allowing me this opportunity to address the membership of the RNAO. It's quite an honor to be able to be putting my name forward for this, and I've included a slide that just kind of reflects a little bit about the shared vision and how it might be a shared vision with RNAO in terms of practice. I guess I'll start a little bit about myself and what has brought me to looking at nursing practice, the MAL for nursing practice position. My career has spanned about 26 years, and certainly from the slide you can see there that I've had numerous different roles within practice across the care continuum, from birth, neonatal to end of life, across many settings, including hospital, community, public health, education, and research, and across many different disease types. I've had different roles within all those areas, including registered nurse, as a nurse practitioner, as a clinical nurse specialist, as a manager, an educator, and researcher, and ultimately, I think what being afforded the honor and the opportunity to be part of practice in so many different areas, and being able to practice in so many different areas and different nursing roles, has been able to see just the breadth and the depth of nursing practice across the healthcare continuum, and really wanting an opportunity to be able to take my experiences and the lessons that I've learned from patients and families and really help to further the vision that's been set by RNAO with regards to nursing practice. What we've seen and what the RNAO nursing practice specialty has shown is that, you know, when we look at practice and we look at expanding those roles within nursing and the different areas of nursing, we certainly see the results in the outcomes and patient outcomes, and decreased deaths, decreased pressure ulcers, pneumonia, pulmonary events, decreased in all sorts of negative consequence and outcomes. And certainly from my perspective and from the perspective of how I would like to be able to take my experiences and help to continue furthering the practice priorities as outlined through RNAO. I believe that ongoing looking at the expansion of the scope of practice and really looking at how we can advocate through government and through our nurses to support those practice issues, as well as looking at some of the priorities that have also been set, in particular as we see now RNAO has been very active, and I want to continue that activity and advocacy around very specific practice issues, specifically around safe injection sites, professional accountability of nursing around physician-assisted death, and around the nurse practitioner compensation in primary care settings as addressed by the budget. Within the MAL nursing practice role, I hope that my network of community within RNAO and within the province and the experience I've had in the different settings will certainly help to better establish the importance of nursing practice and with expanding scopes of practice for nursing, and really continue to establish what RNAO has already set out as is the integral place that nursing practice plays in the healthcare system. My work with RNAO started as a student and continued through different groups in particular in the pediatric committee executive, as well as membership within the nurse executive and the palliative care committee. So I'm not a stranger to RNAO, but my desire to take it to the next level and representation on the board really is because of my dedication to the nursing practice, which really, beyond just being a career for me, is really been something that has been about the passion and helps to define who I am as an individual, which I believe certainly represents most nurses in practice. So I think that is what I have to offer at this point in time.
Thank you very much, Maria. Are you okay? That's good?
Yep, that's
okay,
good.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to ask our other candidate, Cheryl Yost, to be able to speak for her 5 minutes about her position. Cheryl?
Thank you. Hello, I'm Cheryl Yost. I live in Region 2, the Southwest region, and work 50% time in Region 12, which is rural remote, in the Northwest, which is the true north of Ontario. Working in rural remote, I am well placed to continue in support of this position. My personal attributes, which were outlined on my CV, you can read. I'm excited about the committee activities, as it did take a period to get the agenda items in line with my appointment 2 years ago, and now with potential for change in board structure, it would be a good fit for me to stay in that role for an additional year. I continue to be excited and enticed by lifelong learning and advancing our system and our nursing role. The day I graduated, I thought major learning was behind, but it only took me from September to January of the following year to register for my first course, and every year since that, there's been numerous academic activities. I've worked in clinical settings, I've worked in academic settings, which is also included in the post-RN DSCN program. I've also worked in primary care with family health teams, and now currently as community health nurse and nurse in charge in a nursing station. My board positions have included local, regional, and provincial, and those are on my CV as well, which is on the website. I'm bringing recent as well as past to build on, and much is in rural and remote, but also opportunities in larger settings in our Region 2. One site was with, or one position was with 8 hospital partnerships, and then a 5 hospital alliance, and then 3 site family health team. The major academic accomplishments I am not going to go over at this point, but that really is my obsession. What brings excitement and enthusiasm to me is really empowering others while promoting our appropriate system resources. I enjoy partnerships, collaboration, and reviewing new potentials. I enjoy reviewing the literature to see what's new out there. And service delivery models are a present passion so we can build efficiencies and quality. Recently, a colleague sent me an article about a hospital of the future called Forward Thinking Innovation with Research, Teaching, Clinics, and Surgery, a one-stop shop model, no inpatient beds. Was that thought-provoking to say the least? So what is possible? That is where I see our RNAO team come in. It never ceases to amaze me, the reports that are produced and the potentials that arise as I review. There was first the 2011 Creating Vibrant Communities. Then there was the ECHO report, which was enhancing community care in 14. And then 15 came along, building the next chapter of Ontario's rural, remote, and northern nursing. So this was near and dear to my heart. So why do I stay in this system? Why do I want to continue in speaking out for nursing and health? Well, reality shock hit me just within the last week, and I was taken down with cold or flu-like symptoms. I think of myself as a healthy person and endure what comes. But this made me realize even more that any of us have the potential to be ill, and we need a system that works to support staying healthy as well as supporting when people are ill. I'm enticed by the information about hospitals of the future. You know, really, what will our system look like? We need RNs and NPs working to full scope, as well as a team. We need to stop fighting fires, as we need environments that are conducive to efficiency. We need nurses that are excited and not demoralized or bullied. The workplace is seen as increasing, and not enough, the speed is increasing, and not enough RNs and NPs in the setting to care for needs. We need to stop laying off RNs and RNs being replaced by those less qualified. Am I up to the task? The system and process must change. I believe we have solutions, and we need to move on this. I remember vividly what Kim Kersey said in the last RNJ about speaking up and standing out, and this is important, but we as nurses do not always feel that way. And we have other responsibilities, but there are strengths in numbers. And we need to really look at what the options and opportunities are. At the end of the day, I am a nurse, and we as nurses do not always realize the difference we make on the health of individuals or process, because it is what we do. Thank you for the opportunity, and it's an honor to be considered for this position. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cheryl. I will now open it up for any of our members who are listening who would like to ask a question over the phone. Is there anybody who would like to? And if you do, please mention your name first, please. Any questions? Sarah, any questions online?
We don't have any written-in questions just yet.
Okay. And any questions for either of our positions, MAL positions, MAL education or MAL practice? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to just thank our candidates for participating today, and thank you to the members who've been able to be online and listen. And if you have any questions that you think about later, I want to remind you that there will be one more webinar, and that will be Thursday, April the 7th at 2 p.m. So you can either register for that one and ask your questions then, or if you know somebody who will be registered for that one, send your questions forward to them so they could ask them. Just to let you know that this webinar and our first one and our last one will be archived on my RNAO, and you can find a link to them on the elections page. Again, I will remind you that we have one more webinar with the candidates scheduled for Thursday, April the 7th at 2 p.m. And our one member, one vote will open on Tuesday, April the 19th at noon, and will end on Thursday, May the 5th at noon. I encourage all of you to vote and to encourage other members that you know to vote, because there are quite a number of things on the voting ballot in addition to these excellent candidates that have put their names forward. Please remember to vote. Remind your nursing colleagues to vote as well. And if there are still no questions, I will end the webinar. So I'll ask one more time if there are any questions.
We only had a thank you comment, so one participant thanked all the candidates for their willingness to stand for the election, and she says they're all very good candidates, so just a thank you from the participant.
Well, a very apt closure to the webinar. Thank you very much. And again, Thursday, April the 7th at 2 p.m. will be our final of our 3 webinars. And I thank you all very, very much, and I wish you a very good evening. I hope you're not still shoveling out of snow. Okay, thank you. Bye, everybody.
Okay, bye-bye. Have a good night.
Bye.
Thank you too. Bye-bye.